Welcome to Talking in Common Podcast. My name is Corey Burns, author of Felbar's Shop of Curiosities and Occult, now live on Kickstarter through January 3rd. You can also check us out on thecommonlands.com. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as well. Thanks for joining us. So today I wanted to talk about expectations. This is a huge part of telling a story, especially in a tabletop role-playing game. What you want to do with expectations is set yourself up so that when unexpected things happen, they can be mitigated by the expectations that you've set. So, we have behavioral expectations that we're going to cover today. We have knowledge-based expectations, skill-based expectations, and we'll also talk about some performance-based expectations and even out-of-game expectations, and maybe a little bit about how they can enhance the quality of your game. So let's start with behavioral expectations. Now, as a teacher, this is something we're trained to do at the start of the year. Let your students know what the expectations are for your classroom. Raise your hand. Wait your turn. Some of these things are explicit, while some of these things are a little more implicit, right? We've learned them throughout our years of schooling or working or just general social etiquette to help us be better around people. Now, not everybody is very developed in these skills. Some people are extremely developed in these skills. So you have a wide range of individuals who are bringing things to your table socially, and you want to set the expectations so that everybody's on the same page. We all know what's going on. It's like when you're in a band and you're playing music. If we're all playing in the same key signature, Excellent. We're going to have an easier time knowing which notes fit in certain places. If we're just playing whatever we want, well, it starts to sound like noise. And the same thing holds true for your table. You want to make sure that the expectations are set so that we're all playing in the same key. So when we talk about behavioral expectations, the first thing I think of is commitment level. And this is difficult because, especially when you become an adult and you start playing the game, you have a job, you have a family, maybe you even have kids, or just hobbies that take up a lot of your time. It can be difficult to schedule games to play with your friends or at your local game shop, depending on what your schedule's like. So, what I suggest doing for this particular situation is create some kind of group messaging platform. Use a calendar, a shared calendar even.
On such short notice, even if I wanted to go, my schedule wouldn't allow it.
One of the things I like to use is the GroupMe platform instead of text messages. You can set up a wonderful calendar event. You can give the players all the background information they need and the details to help them get set up. And, it lets you know if they're in or not. There are other websites that allow you to sort of fill out your calendar as well. I believe one of them is called Doodle. I'll put a link below for anybody who's interested in either GroupMe or the other one. Another behavioral expectation that can happen at the table, which is frustrating, especially when you're in a combat scenario, is side chatter. I know that it takes a long time for your turn to come around. That can be extremely frustrating. When you're playing in a larger group of maybe 4 to 5 people, and you're waiting 10 minutes around per turn, and nobody's really adding any flavor to the story, it becomes natural to either want to check your phone, check your computer, have a side conversation. And these can be really disruptive to the game. So you want to let your players know, hey, don't do this at the table. I'm letting you know that this is going to be something that's going to frustrate me. If you feel like combat's moving slow, just talk to me and we'll add some role-playing dynamics to the combat scenario. That conversation sets you up to forgive any mistakes that are made. It helps you sort of get over the hurdle of dry, boring combat as well. And you're building communication with your players. It's huge. Another type of expectation you might want to set at your table is related to avoiding suggestive content. If you don't want to handle things that are related to sexuality, or maybe you don't want to go into the details of how a goblin is killed because it's a little too graphic, or you're playing with younger kids and you want to keep it lighthearted, or even avoid things like alcohol because you're playing in a school with students, so what do they drink when they go to the tavern? Well, you have to let the players know that ahead of time. Hey, this world is kind of PG. Or, I don't really like talking about flirting with the barmaiden. That's not really my forte. I'm not particularly good at that, just being honest with you. And it's not something I feel comfortable doing. When you set that expectation before the game, it puts your players in a position to understand where you're coming from and to enhance your experience as the storyteller as well. You're building a connection based on communication that's going to make the game more fun for everyone at your table. Another thing that can be really difficult is related to respect and the dignity of your players. Sometimes we have this habit of quarterbacking. I played a bard levels 1 through 15. I know the bard class inside and out. How did you not use vicious mockery there? And we can feel frustrated when someone who is, trying something new isn't necessarily running when they're just learning how to walk. And instead of that person at your table being an adversary who becomes frustrated when you don't maximize the full potential of your character, well, now you've turned them into an ally. Someone who wants to help you. And you're building connectivity at your table, not between you as the storyteller and your players, but between your players and your players. As a teacher, we learn that everything you want to do in the classroom relates to getting students to engage with students. When you can get students to drive their own education, when you get students to interact with each other, you're hitting the marks. That's great. That's what you want as an educator. And so when I'm at the table, that's what I want from my players. Performance is another important aspect of running the game and setting behavioral expectations. If you're the kind of game master that feels like we need to be in character, when you sit at that table, you're in character. You're no longer Mr. Burns, the teacher. You're Mr. Burns, Gortok, the orc from the Common Lands. Well, okay, that's fine. But not everybody comes to the table with that enthusiasm. So it might be something you have to build over time. And if you're lucky enough to have players who are that intense and that passionate about the game, who are ready to go, bringing all of this channeled energy, then use them as a tool to help those players who are new. Have them sort of mentor those newer players, or maybe the shyer, more bashful players that are feeling less encouraged to do the voice.
Say the line, Bart. I didn't do it.
Another important part of setting the expectations of your game is creating a tone. I've played serious games and they're tons of fun. The game master let me know that the campaign I'm getting involved in is very serious. When I sit down at the table, I am in character. I am role-playing. I know what actions I'm going to take. I know what motivations my character has. I'm ready to go. I've also played games where it's goofy. I'm eating snacks. I'm having a great time rolling dice, and we're just cracking jokes. Maybe we're even talking in between turns about work or just life in general, and it's very casual. But the game master sets the tone for that, and it's important because you know what you're getting into at the table. And if you're not looking for one of those options, or maybe you're looking for something different, you as a player need to let everyone know, hey, I'm here for a very serious game.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass.
Or, hey, I'm here to have a good time. I don't really care what happens. These are the types of things that are going to help make the story more engaging because we've communicated our expectations to each other. And there's a different type of expectation for player versus the game master. The player, you want to let someone know who's running your game what you want out of the game. This is so important. Before I run the game, it's one of the first things I ask my players. I say, okay, so what are you looking for here? And they'll say, oh, what do you mean? I think it catches people off guard because they're not used to thinking about that. First of all, it gives your player the opportunity to put a little more thought into their character. What does my character want? What is this character trying to do? And then it also makes your player think about what they want out of the game. I had one player, he created a pirate. He thought, yeah, this is kind of cool. And I asked him, what does this pirate want out of this world? What does this pirate want out of this game? And eventually he came back to me and said, he wants to own his own fleet of ships. He wants to be the most dreadful pirate ever sailed any of the waters of the Common Lands.
Cruelty reveals everything. You're the dread pirate Roberts, admit it.
With pride.
And I said, that's an awesome destiny. We can make that happen through storytelling. You've also given me a piece of your story that I can puzzle in to make the adventure more engaging. And that might even reel in some of the other players who had no idea this person's trying to become this dread pirate, and now the pieces are coming together and players are engaging with players, and that is huge. As a player, you also want to set the expectation for things you do not want at the table. If you're a player who's very attached to your character, and rightfully so, I mean, guys, D&D can be expensive. I know that I've spent a lot of money on miniatures and maps and all the other type of supplemental materials that go into the game, and if you go on Hero Forge or you buy a customized mini and it costs you a lot of money, and then your character dies, oh, that's such a huge bummer, because now it's not just the emotional investment in the character, it's a financial investment as well. And that can be difficult for a player to sort of handle emotionally. So sometimes it's good to let, the people at the table know, hey, yeah, check out this mini I bought. I'm really attached to this character. And as a game master, it's your job to set the expectations as well. If your character says to you, or your player character says to you, yeah, I'm looking to find a pirate ship. Okay, well, as a game master, you might find it your responsibility to say, okay, I'm going to help this player. I'm going to give them pieces to keep them moving along on their side story while still following my own story, because we're all here to have fun, and we can all do it within the same realm of imagination. You want to set expectations as a game master before the game starts, but sometimes you can't always do that. Sometimes things happen, it goes awry, and you're sitting there thinking, what do I do? Well, I've found that the best thing you can do is just be upfront. When someone wants to use that spell that's going to break the game, you just have to tell them, hey, I love that you're being creative and you really thought out of the box. This is not going to make it so that I can tell my story, and honestly, that's on me, because I should have known that this rule or spell existed. I didn't plan for it, and so my adventure is put to a stall because I have no plan for this. And I've found that almost every single time the player is empathetic to that and feels a sense of, we're working together here. Well, let me help you. That's fine. Let's find a compromise. Maybe I'll give you a feat and you can drop that spell. Maybe I'll give you a different spell. You can rework it even, so that the mechanics of the spell are a little different. There's no limit to the possibility of compromise. Compromise is a huge part of working together with people at a Dungeons & Dragons table, or tabletop role-playing in general. And so you need to utilize those strategies of compromise, but also you can sandwich the way you talk to people. Notice how I said, I really liked the way you used that spell. It was really creative. And you started off with something positive when you let your player know, hey, you really thought out of the box. I'm really proud of you as a player. I want to reinforce your positive behavior. I want to give you the opportunity to do something cool. So I'm going to give you this freedom to maybe find another spell or rework the spell or find another ability so that we can still do something cool for you without breaking the game, but also acknowledge the fact that, you outdid me. I think as GMs, we sometimes get caught in this God complex. After all, you create all the rules for the world. And nothing's more paradoxical than a God that is wrong. That's not a good feeling, right? And so the ego kicks in and we feel challenged when someone says, well, that's on you, bud. You should have planned for me to use banishment, or whatever the spell might be. But there's a humility to the game that brings us all together. When you acknowledge that you did something wrong, you accept it, and then you work together to move on. And I think that's a big part of setting expectations. You just let your players know, hey, I'm going to goof up. I'm only human. I might say something I need to rework because it's going to break the game. Or I might need to roll back an ability on someone, and I'm going to let you know because it's just not going to work for the story overall. And if everybody's on board with that, well, then you're in good hands. You got your story all set, your players at the table, the storyteller are all in a spot to begin. Everybody understands each other. This is a big part of why playing with friends can be a lot more fluid than playing with strangers. You understand your friends. You understand your family. You understand people that are close to you. You know what makes them tick. You know how to make them mad, right? But when you play with strangers at the table, I know I've gone to Gen Con and I've run some games, and I have no idea who some of the people who are at the table are. I've played with fathers who brought their daughters. I've played with individuals who are by themselves or with friends, and I don't know a single thing about them. And in a way, that's great, because all I know is who you're going to be as your character. I really only know you as an individual by your character. And that's really unique too, right? So it's cool because I don't have to take any biases with me. I can just purely take your character for who that person is. But I also don't know what makes you tick. I also don't know what makes you angry. And so reading social cues is particularly important in this instance. You know, if somebody's shut off, or somebody's looking like, you know, bored, or disinterested, or maybe they're leaning in, or maybe they're having a side conversation, but the side conversation is about the game. Well, they're being disruptive, but they are engaging in the game. So there's a way to encourage that. But ultimately, you have to be able to read your table. You have to be able to look at the social cues. And that's somewhat of an art form. And one of the things I want to help with at this channel is being able to read those social cues. Being able to identify like, oh, okay, so this is what they're doing at the table right here. We can rope you in this way. Because you're going to find that everyone at the table has a different personality that they bring to both themselves and their characters, and there's a unison between that. Okay, there's a synergy between those two worlds, and you can bring those to the table in a very, you know, natural way, and you can blend that with the other people at the table in a very natural way so that ultimately everyone is having fun. Thanks for listening. Please check us out on Kickstarter. Felbar Shop of Curiosities and Occult is live until January 3rd. We appreciate all of your support, checking out all of our videos on YouTube. Please subscribe below, and we'll catch you next time.
He has come to take the city by storm because he cares about making things fair. So Dr. Weaver, beware, the demon is here.